Hey all, thanks for listening to the TikTok Take with Doug Pagitt. Today's quickie edition, a little podcast quickie for you, is a conversation that I had with Shane Claiborne. Shane and I have conspired together on a little project, and we want you to be part of it. So this is a podcast quickie where we are recruiting you. On January 17th, we are going to be part of an action at the steps of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., asking for the end of executions in the United States, and that's going to happen by unfurling a banner as a statement. That activity on the steps of the Supreme Court itself is an illegal activity, and Shane and I and a number of others are risking arrest in doing that and are glad to do so. We think that raising the awareness of capital punishment and executions in this country is worth that effort. I mean, it's really not that big a deal to get arrested. I don't know, there'll be a fine or we'll have to go back for an arraignment or something, but compared to the height of the problem. This week, Shane and I came up with an idea and a conversation that, well, we were able to be there to do that, and we invite all of you to come with us to join in that, and I'll say more about that in a moment, that we wanted you to have a chance to participate in a profound way in this event. And so at the same time, we had a conversation about creating a sign that a person in a processional would carry that would list the year and the people in this country who were executed by name. So we've had these signs created that people will carry, and they'll be red and white, and they really make a statement. It goes from one person in 1977 and then starts to build over the course of the years until there are 20s and 30s, and it's a very stark and gripping sight to see these. So we thought there's a number of people we know who would like to participate, but they can't fly to Washington, D.C., they can't be in the legal procession, or they're not comfortable being in the illegal action of unfurling the sign. They want to participate, though. So we said, what if people could pay for a sign? They could send a sign to Washington, D.C. So we've created a website called sendasign.org, and on that website you'll see a donate link through PayPal. You can make a contribution there for, we think $40 is a nice number because it's the 40th anniversary of the reinstatement of modern-day capital punishment in the United States. But maybe you want to make a donation for $5 or for $10. That money will go to pay for these signs. So we'd love to have your participation in it. We'd love for you to join with us. So we talk about that here. So if while you're listening you are compelled to participate, just click over to sendasign.org. You can read a bit more about it there. You can click on the donate button to make a contribution. Those of you who know me, the contribution will be processed via Solomon's Porch, and you'll receive a tax-deductible receipt and all of that for it if that's something that's meaningful to you. So thanks for listening to the podcast. Here's a little quickie with me and Shane Claiborne, and we hope you join with us in bringing an end to executions in the United States. Dear friend Shane, and we got a little plan in the works.
We've been just plotting and scheming, haven't we?
We have. I mean, it's actually been quite a busy week. A lot of people might not know that, since Tuesday, you and I have added to a project that we've been doing. We decided to produce a bunch of signs, and we want people to pay for those signs, and we'll tell them about that, why they should be paying for these signs in a minute. But it's been a good week, of like activists and stuff.
It's been a great week, and I think what I love about all this is people are doing it out of the fire in their bones and their passion. And a lot of these folks that we're working with, have been directly affected by the death penalty. Some of them have had family members that were murdered. Folks that we're working with have been wrongfully convicted and put on death row. So you and I, we're kind of choosing to get involved in this, but for a lot of our friends, this chose them, and I think that makes it all the more meaningful for us as we do the work.
All right, so let's tell people what's going on. On January 17th, it marks the 40th anniversary. Feels like the wrong word, but it's the 40th anniversary of the people in the United States of America choosing to execute people for in the United States, choosing to bring death to people. And the reason we're talking about January 17th so often is because that was the day in which Gary Gilmore was executed in 1977.
Right.
Do I have all this right? And that started an action of the United States executing people. And
Right. Yeah.
we
I
want
mean,
that
some
to
folks say
stop.
it's the reinstatement of the death penalty, but really it was when the courts upheld the death penalty as a legitimate form of punishment in America, and those executions started back up again with Gary Gilmore on the 17th of 1977, January 17th.
And that's been 40 years of people being executed. You know the exact number of people who've been executed in the United States in that amount of time? How many people has that been?
Yeah, it's been 1,441 after Gary Gilmore. And some years, as many as like 98 executions in a year. And thankfully, those numbers are dropping every year, and that's part of why we think it's such an important time to do this. The executions in 2016 were the lowest that they've been in 25 years. There were 20 executions last year, and almost all of those were in two states, Texas and Georgia. So it's an important time to have this witness at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for people to think, like I did for a long time, like, hey, you know what? That's kind of a Texas problem. That's kind of a Georgia problem, or maybe a Louisiana or Alabama problem. But you've really helped me to see that, no, this is not only not a state problem. It's not just a national problem. This is a human problem. Like, this is a human dilemma that we face, that governments execute their citizens. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just even when you put it really bluntly, right, and say, no, in this country, our government executes its own citizens. That's a thing we do. That's not how we think about ourselves in this country, right? We think about ourselves as being like, I don't know, maybe we execute a criminal on occasion, right? But never a person, never a citizen, never a child, someone's child, never a loved one. We like marginalize people off to being a criminal. And, well, they probably deserved it. And I think you've done this really good. You have a book out all about this, Executing Grace, which basically says, to criminalize someone does not validate executing them.
Yeah, no one's saying that terrible crimes should go without consequence. You know what? Like Dylan Roof is on trial right now. No one's saying he should be just free. Let's just ignore what he did. And that's why, to me, it's so important to say to be anti-death penalty doesn't mean we're anti-victim. But for many of us, I think we just feel like we can do better than killing to show that killing is wrong. When we do that, we actually stoop to the morality of those who kill. Some of the people that will be in D.C. with us are experts kind of on a international scale with this, Doug. And one of the things that they've said is over and over, when you look at the places around the world that continue to execute, they point back to the United States and say, well, you guys still do it, And in fact,
right?
When it comes to the international scale, this is the company that we keep. China is the number one executing country in the world. Iran is number 2, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and then number 5 is the United States. And so those aren't known as the champions of human rights, And I think that we, even in the United States, have evolved on this. Like we did used to execute minors and people with intellectual disabilities. So there's been a continual evolution. I think many of us are saying, these evolving standards of decency mean that we can move on from the death penalty and we can find better ways to do justice than by executing.
And you've been saying that in your personal conversations, in your group presentations, in your book. And now we're going to say that on January 17th, there's going to be what's called the direct action. And I've been learning this about protest language. It's a direct action is different than a protest. What I'm understanding is a protest, like you get together and say you're against something. But when you do a direct action, you're acting in a way to be in opposition to, in this case, the government. So there's going to be some of us who are going to act in... I'll just be blunt about it. You and I are going to get arrested along with some other people, or at least we anticipate that could happen, by making a statement on the Supreme Court steps, by unfurling a banner. And that action is in and of itself an illegal activity. And we know and anticipate that could come with the act of arrest and some sort of punishment. But that action is what we're doing to draw attention to the fact that for 40 years, we've been executing people legally in this country, and we want that to stop. That's how I see it. How do you see what we're going to do on January 17th?
Yeah, I think we are following in the footsteps of the great tradition of civil disobedience, of ways that we can make a point and raise the urgency around travesties of justice like this, and in the spirit of the sit-ins and of the civil rights movement, and folks in apartheid South Africa, and all over the world. I think there have been direct actions. And folks that have done civil disobedience. When Dr. Martin Luther King first went to jail, he said, at first it disturbed me, but then I looked at history and found that I have pretty good company there in jail. And I think of so much of the folks in church history, and of course, I have had these collisions. And part of what we're doing is trying to turn up the volume a little bit for grace and for love and for restorative justice. And I mean, it is urgent. As we gather down there will be an execution scheduled, I think the next day or 2 days after. There's 5 executions scheduled this next month. So, this isn't something of the past. It's something that's happening right now.
Yeah, and I will say, this is my opinion. I don't know if you want to share it, but I think there's a tone that gets set and a moral sense of understanding in this country. And when we execute criminals and dehumanize them, turn them into a criminal and execute them, I think it sends a message that that's an appropriate thing. And I think that starts to spread through our culture, that we distrust people and believe that the ending of someone's life is an appropriate response to certain activities. And as long as you have it as a category that there's something you could do in which then your life being taken by force against your will is appropriate, now you're just going to argue about what fits in that category. And I feel like there are too many times where we have a hard time in this country speaking about the moral outrage of people killing one another, of police officers killing people, and trying to separate that from the righteous time when our government choose to execute someone. I can't get out of my mind that 300 or 400 or more times a year, it's hard to keep track, a police officer kills someone on our city streets. Like, our government kills people in our country. And I would love to have a total conversation about what this does to this execution the United States does to justify our killing of people in other countries. But even inside of our own country, our own citizens, police officers or execution teams kill people. And the conversation is not getting any better. I remember in ninth grade, so I was like 11 or 11, I don't know how old you are in ninth grade, but I remember being 11 years old. Gary Gilmore gets executed, right? Or no, maybe I was 11 years old. And that was a big deal. Like, everyone was talking about that back in the 1970s. And at school, we did these argument, in a debate class or whatever, you had to make a persuasive argument. And I was on the do not execute people. And it was all about like, how much money does it cost? And like the morality of it, even as a little ninth grader, barely squeezed in anywhere. Yeah. But we've been trying to talk about this for a long time, and it just continues to happen. And
and as we think of it too, like for me, I was on the other side of this. I was arguing for the death penalty for all through high school. In fact, I debated someone, and I was on the pro-death penalty side.
You should have listened to my ninth grade presentation. I'm sure it would have helped.
We should do a debate, man. But I had all the scripture. I had all these ways of morally validating something that I've come to see and believe is really in stark contrast to Jesus and the value. And I think even in the trajectory of justice in the scripture, even how we've misunderstood things like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, But even all that aside, I think you raise a really important question, which is like, do we really trust our government this much with the irreversible power of life and death? And some of the folks that we will be with in D.C. Were wrongfully convicted, spent decades in jail for crimes they had nothing to do with. And in fact, for all the other debates aside, hopefully everyone can agree that you shouldn't execute innocent people. But for every 9 executions, there's been one exoneration. One person that's been able to prove their innocence. Wow. And you think like, geez, if every 10 planes that took off, if one crashed, we'd call it quits, but
that's right.
Ground the planes. But so I think there's so many other things. That's why There's conservatives concerned against the death penalty. There's folks that money's the issue. There's all these other things. For me, one of the core questions as a Christian is the death penalty raises the question, is any person beyond redemption? And that's one of the reasons that I think it's so important, particularly for people of faith, to be on the right side of history on this issue and to say we do hold out hope. And when we execute, we actually undermine the very work that Jesus did on the cross. And, you know, you look at Scripture and there's murderers. Moses murdered someone, you know, David, Saul of Tarsus. I think there's all kinds of stories of people who did horrific things. And one of the scandals of our faith is we hold out hope that Jesus came for broken people, not for righteous folks.
So we're going to be gathering together with people like you and I that have those convictions, others that don't have a particular religious conviction. Like you said, there's going to be family members, and a couple of things are going to happen when we're in DC, as I understand it. Some of us are going to take a big long banner and we're going to unfurl it and hold it up that says "Stop Executions" on the steps of the Supreme Court, and that is intended to raise awareness. So we hope people spread the word about this. We hope people are there taking pictures, and other friends of ours spread this around their contacts and on social media or however they tell people the stories of their lives, that they'll spread that story. But then we also have this other action that people can participate in that's not illegal, that won't get them arrested, that has to do with a sign, which is where the Send a Sign campaign comes from. And by the way,
what a great idea!
I think we've really come up with something here, buddy. That was this week. So just this week, Shane and I came up with this idea. We hope it works. We hope you all jump in on it with us. If you go to sendasign.org, you can read about all of this, what we put together. It'll show you a image that looks like this one for those watching on the live feed. We've produced 40 signs that will be carried that list the year and the names of the people executed in that year. So 40 signs that are red and white are going to be carried in a procession in a legal fashion on the legal sidewalks. And what we wanted to, the reason I'm making a big deal about this is we'd like for you to chip in to pay for one of these signs. Like, they kind of cost money to do all this. You start to realize you're going to produce 40 signs in a big long one, and it costs some money. So we think if you chipped in $40 or you pooled $40 together, if you're an organization, you put in $400 to pay for some of these signs, then you could send a sign to Washington, D.C. We'll be there to carry it. Some other people will be there to carry those signs. You can send the sign and we'll carry it. It'll list the names of the people who are executed. And I'll tell you, having these put together, Ryan Phipps did a great job of designing these posters. It was emotional for me to be scrolling through the PDF document, and people can sort of see it here, but these are going to be big signs that you're going to carry that have these names. And you see, starting in 1977, one name, and then none in 1978, and then I think two in 1979, and then none in 1980. And then the number just starts to grow, and the font gets smaller and smaller, and the numbers get larger and larger. And it is really impactful. So we would like for you to participate with us. If you want to come to Washington, D.C. on January 17th, there's some other things going on January 20th in D.C. that are not as inspiring to my soul as what's happening on January 17th. But if you want to come in that week, you can join in this. It's all free at sendasign.org. There's a form there that you can click on to say you want to come and join us. Or if you're in the area, we'd love to have you come down. There's also a get-together that night before on January 16th, the Monday night. Shane, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. But we want people to go to sendasign.org, click on that donate link, make a $40 donation or a $4 million donation or a 40-cent donation. I don't know, whatever the minimum, whatever you could contribute to say, we want to send a sign, and we'll be there and we'll carry that sign. And then these are all going to set out together. And I think it's going to be a really powerful visual, and we want people to be involved in that with us.
Amen. And in the back, maybe it'll have some good tunes like "I Saw the Sign Open." Anyway, But so the night before too, like, we're going to live stream a lot of this. We're going to have what we call Voices of Experience on January 16th. It's Martin Luther King Day, who incidentally powerfully said capital punishment is society's final assertion that it will not forgive. So Dr. King will kind of honor that day by hearing from family members of the murdered who have found that the death penalty is not the best way forward, families of the executed, wrongfully convicted persons, folks that are directly affected by this. We're also going to be taking a rifle similar to the one that the state of Utah used to execute Gary Gilmore, and we'll be literally taking a forge and turning that rifle, the barrel of that rifle, into a plow, evoking the prophetic image of beating swords into plows. And it's going to be a really incredible time. A lot of that you can catch online, but we're so thankful for the Send a Sign thing, because it'll give you a way to participate and feel like you're a part of this. And you are, because it really takes all of us. And at the heart really is this. It's so powerful to see victims of violent crimes hold hands with victims of state-sanctioned executions and say together, violence is not the solution. Violence is the problem. Violence is the disease, not the cure. And that's our message, is that we want to remember the victims of violence, and we also want to remember that when we execute as a country, we create a whole new set of victims and reinforce the idea that violence can bring peace, and that's just we can do better than that.
Yeah, Shane, I don't know the details of this. I plan to be there on the 16th and all day the 17th, and we may be.
And maybe all day the 18th.
Maybe all day the 18th, depending on how the action goes after the arrest. If people wanted to come be part of the peaceful, legal protest carrying one of these 40 signs or being with the other hundreds that are going to be on this march, what time should they get there on the 17th, or if they're going to tune in on some sort of live stream? Do you know, is it in the morning, 10 o'clock, 10:30, something like that?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, the Abolition Action Committee, the kind of ad hoc group that's putting this together, has been doing this on the January 17th for years. And what they do is we'll be going at the Supreme Court at about 9 o'clock, because Gary Gilmore was executed around the 10 o'clock hour. And so we will be there. A good time to start tuning in would be 9 o'clock, or showing up around the Supreme Court 9 o'clock. We'll be processing from 9 Eastern. There's a Methodist building right next to the Supreme Court, and that's where we're going to come in with the signs. And again, all of this is, even the folks risking arrest are deeply committed to nonviolence. And what we'll do is we'll carry flowers onto the steps of the Supreme Court as we unfurl the banner. And it'll be a real prayerful, nonviolent, solemn vigil, even as we get arrested or risk getting arrested. But Dr. King said, when we do things like this, it exposes injustice so that it becomes so uncomfortable that people have to respond. And I think that's our hope, is that through our action these 2 days, that more and more people will be uncomfortable with the way that we're executing folks in our country. And so, folks that pray can keep it in prayer. Others can send a sign. And those of you that can, join us live stream or join us, in D.C. It's really going to be a historic event. We think it's likely to be the biggest direct action against the death penalty in recent history.
There's a lot of good reasons to be sending a sign to our collective consciousness in this country and to our the seat of federal government in Washington, D.C. I think there's a lot of good reasons to be sending that and for this to be a starting point. I was shocked about a year and a half ago to learn that one of the reasons there's been a decline in executions is because the pharmaceutical industry is beginning to refuse to give the chemicals necessary for the execution. And there was a execution that went very badly. They all go badly, but one was even extra painful very recently. And the idea that the pharmaceutical industry in this country, I don't know everyone in the pharmaceutical industry, and sort of God bless them, but they don't tend to be the people at the center of the imagination of moral commitment. But when they say, we don't want our product being used for this activity, it's a pretty bad activity, right? When the pharmaceutical industry says, we exist to help people, not to kill people. Maybe we should take this is probably the only time I'll say something like this. Maybe we should take a moral clue from the pharmaceutical industry to get out of the killing business. If we want to have a country where we don't kill people and where we don't kill one another, Yeah.
I mean, another interesting thing that's happened is in North Carolina, it is the medical community that has stood against the executions. And protocol for executions in North Carolina required a physician or medical personnel to be there, you know. And these doctors and nurses said, no, it is a violation of our oath to do no harm. Like, we didn't become doctors to take life, but to save lives. They refused to comply, and the medical association has backed them. And actually, that's one of the biggest things that's stopping executions in North Carolina right now. So I think the invitation is for all of us to be a part of the monkey wrenches that are cogs in the system, you know, that the reason that executions are at the lowest in 25 years and death sentences the lowest in almost 50 years is because there's more and more resistance kind of across the board. And we need to all in our own way be a part of that resistance.
Yeah. Well, Shane, thank you for this. You know, I'm committed to it. I'm glad. I appreciate your invitation deeply. I want people to know that the invitation to be arrested is also open to anyone. This is not a special group of people. There's no like preparation that goes in for being part of the action that would involve being arrested. And you're also welcome to come and be part of the peaceful protest. And you know, this is something that I know. You know, either one of us, we would be glad to sort of just pay for all these signs, right? I'm committed enough to this, right? But I thought this idea that birthed this week but so would other people, right? One of the reasons we're asking for people to go to sendasign.org is that we think other people want to do this. They would like to have $10 or $20 or $40 or something go towards sending this message. That of all the things they're spending money on, this would be a good way to participate. So I just hope people, if they're still watching or listening, recognize this is not just us like, hey, we came up with an idea and we ran out of money and could you go fund us, right? Though we're actually saying, would you like to be part of sending this message? Do you want to send a sign? And we think we're sort of clever with that. But do you want to send a sign on stopping executions? Because you can actually send a sign. You click on the donate. They're already at the printer. They're going to be printed. This thing is going to happen. There's going to be 40 signs and the big stop execution banner. But I think it's great to have the names of the people who this country has executed through our execution laws being processed, those names by year processed during the course of this action. I think it's a powerful statement that, there's this saying that a person experiences 3 deaths: when they take their last breath, when they're put in the ground, and when someone says their name for the last time. And there's some real power to that. And we just want to make sure that these people, while their breath was taken from them, while they were put in the ground, we don't want to give in to this execution fully and completely quite yet. At least we're going to do what we can to keep saying and noticing and raising these names. And we'll find some other ways for these signs to be accessed for people, maybe on images of them or something that they can use. So Shane, thank you.
If folks want to join the action in DC, you can. It's the website's really simple, just abolition.org. And we do like to keep track of people's names that are coming and stuff so we can keep you informed. So go to abolition.org. If you can't make it, join us by live stream. I think this is really a moment where we could be the generation that helps end the death penalty. And, you know, it doesn't take too much courage to look back and say slavery was wrong a generation, after we've decided that. But I think we have an opportunity right now to be a part of making history. So let's do it.
Yeah. So you can go to abolition.org. You can also go to sendasign.org, and Send a Sign will have a link to the abolition page there too. So you can go to either one of those places. Shane, thanks for everything, buddy. And,
awesome, man. I'll see you in a
couple weeks, and message either one of us folks if you want to be part of this. Hey, thanks. Thanks all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. You're a stud, buddy. Thank you.
Oh, that was great, man. Yeah, let me know any way that we can, I don't know, keep snowballing it. Links and all that stuff, whatever. So
let's keep doing it. Let's keep asking people.
I saw the sign opened up. You're going to get tired of me singing these. I'm trying to think of every song that has sign in it,
Yeah.
That
sign
Tesla song,
everywhere, sign blocking out the scenery, breaking my mind. Do you know that one?
Sign everywhere, sign blocking up the scenery,
breaking my mind.
All right.
Do this, don't do that.
Well, I feel good. I feel great about our signage and everything. We got them all in. They're making them up. So thanks for all the work on that.
Absolutely.
I think it's great for this abolition group to feel the love too, because they've been doing it for so long, and I think that it's beautiful to have a little fresh energy and imagination. So
I can sort of feel that too. It's good. I mean, I thought I mentioned this to somebody yesterday. How some of these people have been at this for more than 40 years, and it hasn't felt like they're winning like that. There's something inspiring about the idea that people would stay committed to a cause over all that time.
Yeah, and I had no idea that Bill Pelkey, who's one of my heroes, he's one of the founders of the Abolition Action Group, and his grandmother was killed really brutally. And initially he wanted the death penalty, and then she was an elderly Sunday school teacher that was killed by a teenager, and he'll be there telling his story. But he started this deal.
Wow.
And he's just a legend. He's like I always call him the grandfather of the movement. Because he's going to be there with us. And he wrote me to talk about how special it is to feel like he's doing, less and less because he's older, but he's seeing all this new energy, and it's invigorating to him. So
that's really good. And I think you're right on a couple of points. I think there's some people for whom their what I would say is very rational fear about the effects of the Trump administration are going to be even more motivated for the government executing people to not be an option. You know what I'm
absolutely.
saying?
I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the Supreme Court vacancy or vacancies, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, so. It's a real problem.
We have our hands full. That'll be great, dude. So
right,
keep me in the
love
loop.
You.
Anything else
See you.
I could be doing? Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
See you. Bye.
All right. Love you, man. Bye.